Beyond the Gates spoilers for Tuesday, October 28, 2025 tease that Haley will have an unwanted encounter with the casino boss. The phrase is a constant in any conversation in Fairmont Crest, a town where gossip is currency and every whispered promise is a lifeline or a noose. The tease cracks like ice underfoot, a fragile crack that reveals an entire underground network of deals, debts, and dangers. At first glance, it seems like a simple scene, a woman summoned, a man in a suit smiling too easily across the table. But the encounter is not a single moment. It is a hinge on many lives. It is the shockwave that sets off a controlled dismantling of carefully arranged loyalties and secret plots. Haley arrives at her dining room table with the polite composure of someone used to choreography. She has rehearsed her lines, the hospitable hostess, the dutiful new wife to Bill, the woman who answers his calls and keeps his house in order. But she also carries pockets of calculation, small rehearsed lies that fold into larger decisions. She does not expect Joey to be the one who sits down without invitation, his presence an immediate fracture in the order she tries so hard to maintain. Joey, the casino boss, who smells money and weakness the way other men smell rain, sits like a chess piece poised on the edge of the board, as comfortable intruder and deliberate threat. It is not merely the fact of his arrival that alarms her. It is knowledge that he has about Randy, knowledge Joey disclosed to his confidant Randy himself. Randy had been reckless enough to admit to Joey he wasn't tangled with Bill's wife. The confession is a catalogue of small betrayals, a late-night phone, a misplaced condom in a laundry basket, a laugh at a joke meant only for two people behind closed doors. Joey, who runs a world where secrets are commodities, did not reel off Randy's confession out of spite. He wielded it like a scalpel, exposing the wound to see reactions. Joey's revelation to Randy creates a tension in the mechanics of the story. He does not care about love or fidelity, yet he understands the business of relationships as it affects power. To Joey, Randy's dalliance with Haley is not an affront to marital sanctity. It is interference with the smooth operation of the casino's labor force, with Randy's reliability, with lines Ryan draws between who does what when and where. Joey's life is regulated by margins and figures, but he moreover appreciates how personal mess bleeds into institutional vulnerability. A favored pit boss distracted by lust can cost him a table, a client, a score. So he intervenes, he warns, subtly enforces, a whisper in one ear, a public smirk in the other. His intervention is not moral, it's managerial. Yet because Joey is dangerous, the warning carries emotional weight far exceeding its practicality. Haley senses that weight the moment she meets Joey's eyes. She has rejected Leslie's offer to form an alliance, a strategic, transactional partnership that would have bought her influence but tied her to a different set of obligations. In doing so she believed she maintained freedom, the unsweetened autonomy to pursue her own angle. By turning Leslie down, Haley thought she had fewer entanglements. But freedom in Fairmont Crest is rarely pure. It is porous, full of tendrils that attach to others. Joey's arrival demonstrates that the town keeps records beyond the visible ledger. It keeps a ledger in smells, in bad looks, in the casual way a man takes another man's chair. As he sits at Haley's table, the room tightens. He smiles with a smirk that has nowhere to go but into knives. The conversation starts casual, like a man dropping by for coffee. But Joey is never casual. He says, with a performative lightness, that he cares about Bill. Not because Bill is a friend in the conventional sense, but because Bill is a node in a network that Joey tends, a node whose wife could be a liability or an asset. When Joey says, "I care about the wife of a friend," the phrase is a predicate loaded with menace. To care, for Joey, includes the right to intervene, the right to remove threats by any means necessary. Haley, who knows how quickly his methods tilt from words to actions, becomes anxious. She tries to play naive, the old shimmy of feminine bewilderment, because the alternative is to admit complicity in a plot, a confession that might furnish Joey with leverage or worse. The core of the encounter is a psychological duel more than a negotiation of facts. Joey gestures at Haley's innocence as if testing it against the shape of a lie. He drops hints with the surgicalness of a practiced manipulator, not demanding explanation but offering implication. He tells her he knows what she is doing and with whom. He could be bluffing, he could be exposing truth. For Haley, neither possibility is consoling. If he is bluffing, it means Joey is testing boundaries, and she has triggered his curiosity. If he is telling the truth, then her entire strategy, the one she crafted in private, the one that makes her pulse quick and her hands steady, is liable to collapse. She cannot reveal that she is siphoning from Bill, cannot say she has been careful and precise in deception. Her practiced face of ignorance is therefore not merely for Joey, it is self-protective theater. The meeting crystallizes a terrifying reality. Joey is an axis in the way power moves through the town. He is not just a man who could expose her, he is a figure whose displeasure can ripple outward to Bill, to Randy, to the precarious associates who hold Haley's plan together. He reminds her that he could tell Bill anything, and in doing so he invokes a future in which her scheme is laid bare. The threat is the leverage itself, not the specific content of the revelation. It is a bureaucratic violence, the kind that dismantles lives not by physical force alone but by revelation, by reputation being peeled back to raw bone. Haley's reaction is practical, her fear translates into faster, riskier measures. Panic is a propulsion system for certain choices, and she is propelled toward a conclusion she already planned for, to accelerate the final act against Bill. The meeting with Joey crystallizes urgency. The longer she lingers in this precarious arrangement, the more likely she is to be caught between men who will not hesitate to consolidate advantage both Joey and Bill. In her mind, the solution becomes singular: finish the job and leave Fairmont Crest before the net tightens. But the plan to kill Bill is never simply Haley's alone. The narrative web shows that Joey and Bill themselves share alliances entangling loyalties in which harm to one risks harm to the other. Joey's casual taunt that Bill might return to Danny, that the younger woman's charm is the kind of currency that makes men forget arrangement, is calibrated to provoke. It is cruelty masquerading as insolent truth. He knows how to wound Bill where he is most sensitive, his pride and his jealousy. Joey's gambit is twofold. First, he positions himself as the man who can predict Bill's lives outside the casino, a man who knows life's transactional details. Second, Joey tests Bill's reaction, because a man's response reveals whether he will escalate and whether Haley's plan will encounter counterforce. Bill, for his part, is not naive. He pieces together patterns like a detective who is also a proprietor of taste. He registers inflection, timing, and who smiles when. The idea that his young wife could entangle herself with another man is galling, and Joey's barbed comments know precisely which trigger to pull. Bill's possible reaction, a storm of denial or violence, will determine the scale of chaos. Haley senses this. She perceives Bill as both an obstacle and a catalyst. Her plan to remove him rests on the illusion of predictability, that Bill will continue to be predictable, that his friends will remain predictable, and that Joey, as a dangerous but predictable player, will not alter the stakes beyond her control. The next few weeks unfold like a chess tournament. Haley enacts roles with finesses that flicker between tenderness and calculation. She attends charity luncheons with Bill, letting golden light fall upon them in public, a deliberate performance for cameras and neighbors. Yet at night she reviews her options like a general unauthorized: how to make the accident look like chance, how to secure alibis, how to coax Randy into positions where his presence will be unnoticed and his loyalty purchased. Randy, meanwhile, is a human fault line, caught between admiration for Haley and fear of losing Joey's favor. He oscillates like a metronome between the comfort of Joey's protection, stable, lucrative, and pragmatic, and the dangerous thrill of being the secret in Haley's life. Joey watches Randy with the cool disinterest of a man who knows the fragility of his staff. He punishes carelessness not in dramatic scenes but through small recalibrations, a cut in hours here, a new table assignment there. His observations seep into the plot like oil, lubricating the eventually inevitable conflagration. It is his method to let friction build then steer its path. The casino is a closed ecosystem where every human action is data. Joey sees in Randy the perfect pawn, compliant when threatened, pliant when rewarded, and decisive only when cornered. Haley exploits Randy's pliancy carefully. She flatters him, She makes him feel seen in ways Joey never does. In the dimly lit back rooms where cigarette smoke hangs like cheap velvet, she outlines necessary steps in a dispassionate whisper: get Bill to a place where an accident is plausible, make Bill drink past the point of reason, ensure that the car he drives that night has a mechanical fault. Randy listens because he is in love with the glamour of being part of a high-stakes plot, the illusion of agency that comes when one is chosen for a secret. To Randy, Haley offers not just affection but meaning, a way to move from the margins to the center for a fleeting, intoxicating moment. Yet moments of intimacy always contain the seed of self-destruction. As the plan progresses, the convoluted emotional calculus shows fractures. Randy begins to fear what success means. A life after the deed will require new roles, new faces, and perhaps the sacrifice of all he values. He entertains doubts about whether Haley sees him as a man in his own right or merely as an accessory, a role designed to be expendable when otherwise inconvenient. His conversations with Joey become symbolic of a man seeking counsel from the very structure that might condemn him. Joey's responses are not paternal. They are transactional. He evaluates Randy's usefulness rather than his humanity. This reaction matters because Randy's perception of his own sacrifices, whether they are honored or dissolved, will determine whether he will betray Haley when pressure mounts. Haley's strategy is meticulous and cruelly elegant. She does not conceive of murder as an explosion. She plans it like a surgeon. Precise incisions under the cover of domestic normalcy. The evening she chooses is ordinary: a polite dinner at the Fairmont Crest Club, laughs over dessert, a gentle insistence that Bill step out for a smoke before the car ride home. These are the banal, believable details that create a signature of chance. Yet behind each banal detail there is calculation, the loosening of a stabilizer on Bill's wheel, a timed phone call that ensures Bill takes a particular route, a distracted security guard rerouted with a phony message. It is choreography meant to make the death look like the city swallowed him whole. The town buys into narratives of accident because they prefer tidy tragedies to messy truths. But plans meet resistance. The human heart is not a machine engineered to follow plans without deviation. Bill's unexpected agitation one night, a sudden decision to invite an old friend, an unplanned detour to pick up a forgotten medicine tests their scheme. Men like Joey and Bill, who live in the careful cultivation of control, make spur-of-the-moment choices that rattle the clean lines of deception. Haley adapts, improvises, slenderly adjusting the plan like a seamstress rerouting a stitch to avoid unraveling a gown. Each improvisation is a risk. The more she changes, the more loops she introduces that could catch on a passing hand. Joey's vantage point remains crucial. He watches not physically but through the lattice of his influence: who speaks to whom, who gets a new shift, who receives a phone call at midnight. Joey's insinuations about Haley are not just enraging games targeted at Bill's ego, they are probes designed to ascertain whether Haley is crude or clever, desperate or dangerous. His decision of whether to use what he knows to inform Bill, to blackmail Haley, to step aside and let the town's rumor mills do their work will determine the nature of the finale. He takes chances, remarking on Danny's allure and the possibility of Bill returning to her. The comment is designed both to wound and to watch, a way to measure whether Bill will strike, to see whether his wife's fate will cause him to lash out, and in doing so reveal the nature of his alliances and the depth of his danger. The plot thickens when external actors begin to show agency. Leslie, rebuffed by Haley, does not merely disappear. She watches from the margins like a predator denied an easy meal. Her rejection fosters a new kind of strategy. Leslie recognizes that alliances are often shifts of timing. If she cannot partner now, she can undermine later. Her moves are subtle: a casual mention to a mutual acquaintance, a text left accidentally for the wrong person, a rumor planted like seed in the fertile ground of the town's salons. Leslie's method is not direct, it is to destabilize Haley's social capital, to create cracks in her performance by casting doubt among those who might otherwise support her. Danny, the other woman Joey mentions as a potential rebound for Bill, is also an instrument of fate. She is younger, less encumbered by the town's etiquette, and more likely to act on impulse. If Bill indeed turns toward her, Jealousy and humiliation might become instruments of re-evaluation, propelling him to behave in ways that either hasten Haley's departure or complicate her plan. Danny's very existence opens new lines in the emotional geometry of the story, a potential if temporary bomb for Bill's ego, a source of scorn for Haley, and a tool for Joey's manipulative narratives. As the social dynamics swell into a crescendo of tension, the moral landscape becomes intentionally murky. No single character is purely villainous or purely virtuous. Each acts from a mixture of motives, self-preservation, hunger, and despair. Haley, in particular, becomes a study of desperation dressed as empowerment. Her actions reflect a woman who has learned the arithmetic of survival in a town that values wealth and image over kindness. She rationalizes, she plans, she feels the coldness of inevitability. The audience is forced to oscillate between empathy and horror, sometimes even admiration for the meticulousness of her plan, and revulsion for the human life she plans to erase. Meanwhile, the psychological consequences accumulate. Each sleepless night, each furtive exchange, each hesitation becomes a chisel shaping the characters' faces. Randy's guilt begins to manifest in small behaviors, jittery hands, an inability to meet a stranger's eyes, a sudden desire to confess. Bill's suspicion grows like a physical illness, a fever in his chest that makes him wake at odd hours convinced of conspiracies. Joey's amusement at playing puppet master darkens into ribald satisfaction, one tempered by a foreknowledge that any game played in Fairmont Crest can rebound with lethal force. Tension mounts toward the appointed night with the inexorable inevitability of a tidal wave. Plans are set into motion, contingencies carved, and alibis rehearsed. Haley's composure is an armor, but under it her breath comes quicker. The body is a terrible liar, and the body leaks truth where the mouth does not. As the city lights blur outside the windows and the casino's neon pulse throbs in a distant rhythm, each actor moves toward a crossing point where choices will cascade into irreversible consequences. The meeting with Joey, which initially seemed an annoyance and a threat, now stands revealed as the early tremor that foreshadowed a landslide. Every small interaction since has been an aftershock, rearranging the ground underfoot. And yet, even as the strategy solidifies, no one in Fairmont Crest is immune to chance. A stray dog darting across a road, a traffic jam caused by a fallen tree, the sudden recognition of an old man at a gas station. These are the unpredictable variables that the most meticulous plans fail to account for. The town itself, with its mix of routine and randomness, becomes another character in the narrative, capricious, indifferent, sometimes complicit, and sometimes the arbiter of truth. Haley's plan relies on manipulating contingency. But contingency is not a servant. It is a wild thing. She knows that. That knowledge steadies her hands even as it quickens them. At the end of these accumulated tensions, as the designated night approaches, the air in Fairmont Crest is taut with expectancy. People move through days with polite smiles that conceal storms. Each glance across a dinner table is loaded. Joey waits in his domain, not because he expects fireworks but because he anticipates patterns. And when patterns break, he profits. Randy trembles between devotion and terror, and Bill's face grows harder each hour. Haley, the architect of this fragile catastrophe, tightens her resolve because in the theater of her life, there is no stage left for retreat. The next scene will decide whether she walks free or into a cage. Whether her deception becomes myth or myth released into the town's memory as a cautionary tale. The consequences will not be neat. They will not be clean. They will be human, ragged, and irreversible. The night that was supposed to change everything begins without fanfare. The rain starts at dusk, soft, uncertain, like a warning whispered by the sky. Haley dresses in silence, her movements deliberate, each gesture polished into control. She has spent weeks constructing this evening, the choice of restaurant, the placement of her handbag by the door, the soft perfume designed to draw Bill's attention and disarm him. Every detail feels rehearsed, but the air in Fairmont Crest has that electricity that signals when something alive is about to die. Bill sits across from her at the table, nursing a drink he doesn't particularly like. His eyes have grown watchful, heavier with thought than she's used to. The hints Joey dropped have not gone ignored. Bill doesn't confront her, not directly. His style of suspicion is quieter, the kind that tightens conversations until they become brittle. He watches her movements as if cataloging evidence, and though his words remain polite, they carry weight. Haley can sense he is measuring her responses, checking for tremors beneath her surface calm. Randy waits elsewhere that night, his heart pounding beneath his shirt as he replays Haley's instructions. His loyalty has been stretched thin between two forces: the woman who makes him feel indispensable and the boss who holds his fate. Joey's warning to stay away from Haley rings in his head, but so does the echo of her touch, her voice whispering promises that his life could finally mean something more. He knows this night will either bind him to her forever or destroy him completely. Joey is not at the casino that night. That in itself is unusual. He leaves his empire running on autopilot, his trusted lieutenants minding the tables. Instead, he drives through the outskirts of town, a cigar between his teeth, eyes on the winding road that leads toward Bill's estate. There's no official reason for him to be there, at least none he would ever confess. Perhaps it's curiosity, or perhaps he wants to see whether Haley's desperation will drive her past the point of no return. Joey does not intervene in people's lives without motive, but he sometimes enjoys watching his theories play out in real time. At the restaurant, Haley's plan begins to wobble under the sheer unpredictability of the human heart. Bill, halfway through his meal, asks about Randy, a name she did not expect to hear. The sound of it freezes her for half a heartbeat, but she recovers with a laugh, light and careless. Bill doesn't press, but she can feel his attention sharpen like a knife against her pulse. There's no direct accusation, but something in his tone makes her stomach twist. He knows something, or at least suspects enough to make her nervous. She tries to redirect the evening, suggesting they leave early. Bill agrees too easily, and that unsettles her even more. The drive home should be the perfect opportunity. The engineered fault in the car waiting like a silent accomplice, but now doubt gnaws at her. What if Joey already told Bill? What if Randy couldn't keep quiet? The rain picks up, streaking the windshield, and for the first time, she wonders whether she's the one being led into a trap. Meanwhile, Randy sits in his small apartment above the service quarter of the casino, staring at his phone. His nerves fray with every passing minute. He imagines Haley smiling across the table from Bill, her charm hiding malice, and he feels both pride and horror that he's part of it. Then the phone rings. It's Joey. The sound alone drains the blood from his face. Joey doesn't bother with pleasantries. He tells Randy he knows where he's supposed to be tonight, what he's supposed to help make happen. The words are calm, but the silence between them is suffocating. Joey doesn't demand anything, he just asks if Randy's sure he wants to go through with it. Randy can't answer. His throat is dry. Joey lets the silence linger before ending the call. That's all it takes, a few words and a pause to make Randy reconsider every choice he's made. He grabs his jacket and heads into the storm. Back in the car, Bill's tone changes. He starts speaking about loyalty, about how people underestimate what he notices. The air thickens as the road narrows through the dark stretch near the cliffs. Haley's pulse quickens. She's moments away from the turn where she planned to trigger the car's fault. Bill's words come slowly now, deliberate, like a man walking toward a truth he's ready to confront. He tells her he spoke to Joey. The name lands like a hammer. Joey had called him 2 days earlier, Bill says, out of what he called friendly concern. Joey had hinted that Randy might be distracted, and that Haley might be the reason. Bill doesn't accuse her directly, but the implication fills the car like smoke. Haley's mind races, calculating whether to deny, to confess, or to let the plan proceed as intended. Just as the turn approaches, a pair of headlights flash in the rear-view mirror, another car speeding toward them through the rain. Haley's hands tighten on the wheel. The moment fractures into chaos. The car behind them swerves too close, and instinctively, she jerks the steering wheel to avoid collision. The tires scream, the car spins, and the world collapses into the roar of water and metal. When consciousness returns, there's silence. The car has slammed into a ditch at the side of the road, airbags deployed, smoke curling from the engine. Haley feels pain radiating from her shoulder but forces herself to look over. Bill is motionless beside her, blood seeping from a cut on his forehead. For one suspended moment, she cannot tell if he's alive. Panic claws at her throat. This isn't how it was supposed to happen, not this messy, not this uncontrolled. Then she hears a sound outside, another car door slamming. Through the rain-smeared glass, she sees Joey stepping out of the vehicle that had followed them. He moves with calm precision, his coat untouched by panic. He opens her door, pulls her out by the arm, his grip iron hard. "Congratulations," he says evenly, eyes flicking toward the wreck. "You finally did it." She stares at him, drenched, trembling, unable to understand whether he's mocking her or helping her. Joey walks to Bill's side, checks his pulse, then looks back at her. He's alive. For now. Haley's voice is barely audible. "Why are you here?" Joey's smile is faint and humorless. "Because I don't like surprises in my town. And because I told Bill he should keep an eye on his wife." Looks like he didn't take the advice seriously enough. He motions for her to step back, his tone sharpening. "You're going to listen very carefully. This," he gestures toward the wreck, "isn't over. If he dies, the police will find what's left of your plan. If he lives, he'll know you meant for him to die. Either way, you lose. Unless you let me fix it." She's too stunned to answer. Joey's proposition is terrifying in its simplicity. He will cover the evidence, reshape the story, ensure the authorities see only an accident. In return, she owes him everything: loyalty, silence, and whatever favor he calls in later. Randy arrives minutes later, headlights cutting through the fog, face pale with horror when he sees the wreck. Joey watches him carefully. "Good timing," he says dryly. "You were supposed to help with the setup. Instead, you get to help with cleanup." The three of them stand in the rain: the woman who planned the murder, the lover who lost his nerve, and the man who owns them both through information. The tableau is almost biblical in its symmetry. Joey issues orders like a general. Randy will drive Haley home and ensure she's seen by neighbors at a believable time. Joey will handle the car, the scene, the story. He's done this before. He knows how to make chaos look like coincidence. Hours later, the official report describes a near-fatal accident caused by wet roads. Bill is in the hospital, unconscious but alive. The police find no sign of tampering. Joey's people have already made sure of that. To the world, Haley is a shaken wife who narrowly survived tragedy. To Joey, she is a debt waiting to be collected. Days pass, and Fairmont Crest settles into uneasy quiet. Bill remains in critical condition, machines breathing for him while rumors swirl. Haley visits the hospital daily, her tears convincing to everyone except herself. Joey visits once not to see Bill, but to remind Haley of her new position. He sits beside her in the sterile cafeteria, voice low enough to blend with the hum of fluorescent lights. "You owe me," he says. "And sooner or later, I'll decide how you pay." Haley nods because she has no choice. But behind her eyes, something dark begins to form. Gratitude is fleeting, resentment lasts longer. Joey saved her, yes, but in doing so, he made himself her next obstacle. She begins to understand that surviving Bill may have been easier than surviving Joey. Randy, meanwhile, unravels. The guilt is corrosive. He drinks too much, sleeps too little, jumps at every knock on the door. He imagines Joey's voice around every corner. The weight of complicity crushes him, and eventually, he does what terrified men often do: he talks. Late one night, he visits the hospital, slipping past the nurses, and sits by Bill's bedside. He confesses everything, not knowing if Bill can hear him, not caring. He tells the whole story, from the affair to the plan, to Joey's intervention. Then he leaves, sobbing into the dark, unaware that one of Joey's men has been watching from the hallway. By morning, Randy is gone. The police find his car abandoned near the docks, engine still warm. Joey's people say he fled town. Haley knows better. Joey doesn't let loose ends drift. When Bill finally wakes, his memory is fractured. The last thing he recalls clearly is the rain, the road, and Haley's frightened face. He believes her story at first, the narrative of accident, of bad luck. But fragments of Randy's voice echo faintly in his head, like ghosts of a conversation half heard. Each day those fragments sharpen, and suspicion returns. Joey visits him privately under the guise of friendship. He tells Bill to rest, to recover, to forget the people who nearly destroyed him. But there's something in Joey's eyes that suggests he knows more than he says and that he intends to use the situation to his advantage. Bill, weakened but alive, begins to suspect that Joey's concern is not entirely benevolent. Haley watches them both from a distance, trapped in the web she tried to spin. Joey's influence over her life tightens, his calls come at odd hours, his demands subtle at first, an introduction here, a favor there. Each task binds her closer to him. She realizes that Joey doesn't simply want obedience, he wants ownership, to make her another of his assets. But Haley is nothing if not adaptive. Beneath her fear, anger simmers. She studies Joey the way a snake studies a boot, calculating when to strike. She starts planting seeds of doubt between him and Bill, whispering suspicions, manipulating coincidences. She knows she can't overpower Joey directly, but she can let him destroy himself by turning his allies against him. The story that began with a simple affair now coils into a larger game of survival and vengeance. Each character carries a secret weapon, Joey with his network, Haley with her cunning, Bill with his resurging clarity. And somewhere in the shadows of Fairmont Crest, Leslie and Danny linger, ghosts of past conversations who might yet tilt the balance. The storm that began that night never truly ends. It only changes form. It becomes a quiet pressure, a slow countdown toward inevitable reckoning. The gates that once separated power from ruin stand half open now, waiting for whoever dares to step through. And in this town, no one crosses without blood on their hands.